Alright guys, so you just did page 2 for homework. And when you got to number 1, it asked you what's the mass of solid that would dissolve in 100 milliliters of water. If you look at your graph, you'll see that it says grams of solid over 100 grams of water. So FYI to you guys, because water has a density of 1 gram per milliliter, 100 grams of water is the same as 100 milliliters of water. And what you had to do to answer these questions was find the temperature, so 70 degrees for potassium nitrate, and you had to go up until you find the line that has potassium nitrate on it, and that would be right here. That is your maximum amount. You go to your left, and you should have had 140 grams for letter A. We want to do number 2, which says, what mass of solid will dissolve in 200 milliliters of water? The same thing, potassium nitrate at 70 degrees. So we just discovered that 140 grams will dissolve at 70 degrees for potassium nitrate. Now we want to figure out how much would dissolve in 200 milliliters, which is really twice the amount. You could take that 140 and multiply by 2, but I want to show you how to do it using not dimensional analysis, but ratios, okay? So the solubility in 100 milliliters of water is 140 grams over 100 milliliters of water, okay? So proportion-wise, we're changing the bottom amount, which is 100 milliliters, to 200 milliliters. And we want to find X. How much can be dissolved in 200 milliliters? So in essence, you're taking this, cross multiply, and dividing, which is the same thing as multiplying by 2 in this case. And so you would get 140 times 2, which is 280 grams. Now the reason why it's good to know the cross multiply divide, because this amount right here can change. We can make it 50 milliliters of water. We can make it 300 milliliters of water. You'll always be able to find X by cross multiplying and dividing. All right? Okay, so now your sodium chloride at 100 degrees. So when you look at your graph at 100 degrees right here, sodium chloride, the line with sodium chloride is located, let's see, sodium chloride right here. This line, it doesn't really move much. So go up to this line and then go to your right, which is around, it's not quite 40 yet, it's like 39 grams. And so when we get to this part in 200 milliliters of water, 39 times 2 is 78 grams. Ammonium chloride, when we went and did this one at 90 degrees, ammonium chloride's line is right here. So 90 degrees, hit the line, go to your left, and I had that was about 72 grams. And remember I told you can go 2 up, 2 down for my number. So I had about 72 grams. And so twice the amount right here would have been 144 grams. Okay? Now, types of solutions. There are 3 types: saturated, unsaturated, and supersaturated. So on a solubility curve, the lines indicate the concentration of a saturated solution. So the lines that we went up to is its saturated mark. And the maximum amount of solid that will dissolve at that specific temperature. The values on the graph that are, and it says below, above, or on a curve, represents unsaturated solutions, so more solid can be dissolved at that temperature. So we talked about it, I talked about it on the video that I did the last time, and that's under the line, so below the line. So if it falls below the line, it is unsaturated. If it falls on the line, it's saturated. If it falls above the line, it is supersaturated. So use the solubility curve on the previous page to label the following solutions as supersaturated, saturated, or unsaturated. If it's unsaturated, write how much more solid can be dissolved in this solution. If it is supersaturated, how much would be crystallized, okay? So it says a solution that contains 70 grams of sodium nitrate at 30 degrees in 100 milliliters of water. So first and foremost, we're going to find out what type of solution it is. So you're going to go to your graph and you're going to find 30 degrees, and for it says a solution that contains 70 grams of sodium nitrate. So you're going to find a saturated amount first. So let me put on my pen. We're going to go to 30 degrees and we're going to find sodium nitrate, which is above right here, and stop. We're going to go to our left. My line is not straight because it's really hard to draw a straight line. But I have here about 93 grams. Is it saturated? So I'm just going to write right here. 93 grams. Is it saturated? That's the max. How much were you able to dissolve in it? If you go back to page 3, letter A, it said it contains 70 grams. So 70 grams is right here. It is way underneath this line. Look, way right here, 70 grams is right here. So that's underneath this 93 mark. So that means what type of solution is it? It's unsaturated. So right here, you're going to write unsaturated, right? So let me put my, so I'm going to write unsaturated. And then it says, if it's unsaturated, how much more can you add to it to make it saturated? So saturated was 93, right? We only put 70. So 93 minus 70 equals how much extra? 23 grams. So that's how much more you would need to add to make it saturated. Now, letter B. It says a solution that contains 50 grams of ammonium chloride at 50 degrees Celsius and 100 milliliters of water. So we're going to go back to our graph. We're going to find 50 degrees at the bottom, and then we're going to find ammonium chloride's line. So 50 degrees, ammonium chloride's line is right here. And then we're going to go to our left, and that maximum amount is 50 grams. So I'm going to go right here on this chart just so I can keep track of my things. So I'm just going to write it down just so I can keep track of my saturated. 50 grams is saturated, okay? Now I'm going to read what it says. A solution that contains 50 grams of ammonium chloride at 50 degrees and 100 milliliters. So what are we? Supersaturated, saturated, or unsaturated? If we dissolve 50 grams, and we just said the graph showed us 50 grams. So therefore this is saturated. So do I need to add anything to it to make it saturated? No, we're already at our max. Is anything going to be crystallized or dropped out because it's oversaturated? No, because we're at our max. So this is a 0 right here. All right, letter C. A solution that contains 20 grams of potassium chlorate at 50 degrees. But look at what it says, the temperature, not temperature, the amount, 50 milliliters of water. So we're still going to find our max in 100 milliliters of water, 100 grams of water. So let's look at our chart. So at 50 degrees right here, and then it says potassium chlorate. Potassium chlorate's line is right here. This is the line for potassium chlorate. You can see it right here. So at 50 degrees, potassium chlorate, go to your left with a straight line. I have this about 22 grams. So I'm going to write down my max so I can keep track. Let me get my pen so I can keep track. So 22 grams, but that's 22 grams in 100 grams of water. I need to know that. Now, what is the max in 50? So earlier we did proportions, and the bottom we're going to change to 50 grams. So you can cross multiply, divide 22 times 50 divided by 100, or because we know it's half, you can just divide by 2, and that will be 11 grams. So 11 grams is the maximum that can dissolve in 50 milliliters or 50 grams of water. So 11 is my max. How much were you able to dissolve in there? It said 20. So that means I am super saturated because I dissolved more than what could technically be held. So this is a super saturated solution. Okay, my handwriting is terrible. I'm just going to just write super sat. Now, how much extra is it holding? So how much extra is it going to drop out if I disturb the solution? So 20 minus 11 is what number? 20 minus 11 is 9. So 9 grams is extra. And that's what's going to drop out in a crystal. So my crystal size would be 9 grams. Okay? All right, the next question. So we have, let me exit out of this. So we have a solution that contains 70 grams of potassium iodide at 0 degrees in 200 milliliters of water. The first thing that you want to do is find the max in 100 grams of water. So we have 0 degrees as your temperature, potassium iodide. The line for potassium iodide is way up here. 0 is right here. Here it goes. So I have it to be about, it's like halfway between 120 and 130. So 125. So my maximum amount, let me write it. My maximum amount is 125 grams, but remember it is not 100 milliliters, it's actually 200 milliliters. So what would be the maximum amount if it was in 100 milliliters? Cross multiply, divide. So 100 times 125 divided by 200, and that will be 250. So 250 is the maximum amount that can dissolve in 100. I'm sorry, I did it backwards. Excuse me. This first part is 100 and the second part is 200. I'm sorry. My solubility is out of 100. So 200 times 125 divided by 100 is still 250, okay? So 250 grams can dissolve in 200 milliliters of water, all right? So I want to find out, is this saturated or supersaturated or unsaturated? How much did you dissolve in it? 70 grams. 70 grams is way less than 250. So my solution is unsaturated, okay? Now, how much more could I add to it to make it at its max? So we said 250 out of 200 is its max. So that means we need to take this 250, subtract it from 70, 250 minus 70. So the maximum, not the maximum amount, but the extra that I need to add to it to make it max is 180 grams. Okay? All right, so additional practice. So it says at 90 degrees, you dissolve 10 grams of potassium chloride in 100 grams of water. Is the solution saturated or unsaturated? So you go to your graph and it says you dissolve 10 grams in 100 grams of water. So my 100 grams of water is over here and it's at 90 degrees. So at 90 degrees, and you went to potassium chloride. So go to 90 degrees. This is potassium chloride's line. You're going to come across, and it has a maximum amount of about, let me do it again. Here's 90 degrees. Go across. I would say not 55, but maybe about 53. Well, yeah, I would say about 53. It's not 55. And it says you only dissolve 10 in there. So therefore you are unsaturated because 10 is way down here. Here's my 10 grams and here's my line. So I'm under the line, so it's unsaturated. And it says, how do you know? Because your maximum says is 50, 55, or 53. All right, so number 2 says a mass of 100 grams of sodium nitrate is dissolved in 100 grams of water. At 80 degrees, is the solution saturated or unsaturated?